and welcome back to the Ninox Real Estate Solution by Nioxis Corporation. In our last class, we began setting up the tenants and the lease clauses or charges that would be part of our commercial or residential lease contracts. In this class, we're going to use those items that we set up previously and actually create a lease. Now, every lease starts with the same boilerplate content, but is then modified with the particular names of the tenant, the identification of the unit and property, and possibly additional clauses that are uniquely relevant to a particular lease contract. We're going to begin by going into our lease module and electing to create a new lease. First, we're going to identify the unit that's being rented. Now, by defining the unit, we also define the property and can link back to the owner of that property. All of that is done automatically. And we then identify the tenant. If we have lease templates, which are predefined boilerplates, we can select a lease template here and move on automatically. In this case, we're not going to use a template. We're actually going to build a specific and unique lease for this tenant for this particular unit. We note the lease date will default to today, and the lease ID will default to the unit code, the property code, the year, and the first four letters of the tenant's last name. Let us say that occupancy is to begin next Monday, and occupancy is to end at the end of the 12th month of the lease period. We also can set the term of the lease, which is really more common in commercial leasing, but we have the option of anything from a 1 to a 5-year lease. Now, within this lease, we're going to start with all of the boilerplate clauses that we've already imported as the lease document. And the lease document can be customized to meet your specific needs and requirements. We then are going to add in the specific clauses, sections, and content that are relevant to this particular lease agreement and the relationship that it defines. We could go with defaults only, which for this residential lease are rent, the 2 utilities, and the security deposit, or we can pick and choose. Now, it is important to remember that our options for lease charges and clauses are dependent on lease type. These are apartment options. If this were a commercial lease, notice that the pet options would go away, but the common area maintenance option would now appear. So we're going to select for this lease sections for rent, electric, gas, the security deposit, and let's say they have a small pet. We're also going to include a section about subletting. Now, it's important to remember that the clauses that we select here to be added into our lease may or may not have financial ramifications. For example, the rent clause is going to include a definition of the monthly rent charge and the date on which it needs to be paid. The sublet clause may not have a monthly charge associated with it. It's just a paragraph or multiple paragraphs of text that we want included in this particular lease because this particular tenant will have sublet privileges. Another tenant who has no option for sublet, we wouldn't even include that in the lease. Once we've defined all of the charges and all of the clauses we want to add to our standard boilerplate, we're going to go here and add all those clauses to the lease. And there we go. Here is our rent clause. Here are our 2 utilities, electric and gas. We have the pet clause, the one-time security deposit fee, and the option for subletting. And again, there's no dollars associated with the subletting. Now, a couple of these sections do require a little more content. For example, we don't have a rent amount yet. So I'm going to go into the rent section, noting that the clause, the content that is to appear in the actual lease contract PDF has already defaulted, and I can add more in the lease addendum section. But I'm going to define that this is a 1-year lease at the rate of $1,850 per month it's going to be due on the first day of the month and considered late on the fourth day of the month. The annualized charge is $22,200. Sometimes we have to prorate particular charges. In this particular case, the tenant is going to move in on the 11th of the month. This $1,850 is for an entire month of occupancy. We're going to prorate this $1,850. Out of the 31 days that are in the month, the tenant is going to occupy the unit for 21 of those days. Therefore, of the $1,850 that would be due if they had occupancy for all 31 days is going to be prorated to $1,253.23. Let's go in and fill in the electric to indicate that that's going to be $35 per month. And we can note that the gas is $58 a month. And remember, you can define the basis and the payment calculation for each clause independently. Here we have a pet charge. Let's say that it's $35 per resident pet, but they have 2 pets. $840 a month will be the pet charge, and any text, any content to be included in the lease for this particular charge will be defined here. Now it's time to build the lease. We're going to go up to this icon, and our lease is now built. We see that the total lease amount for this year is $23,845.35. This is our prorated 12 months of rent, which we see here. Here we see our pet charges for the 12 months. We see all of our utilities, 12 months of electric and 12 months of gas fees. So our lease charges are now defined. The content of the PDF that is the lease contract also defined. We're now ready to produce the lease. That can be done very easily by clicking on the document button. We're going to ask the system to create a new document for us. It will prepare the document tags for our lookup and search capabilities. It'll prepare the document given all of the charges that we've asked to be included, and it will then attach the form to the lease profile that we just created. And here we have our lease. We can categorize and classify it. We can indicate the cabinet, drawer, and folder in which we want to have it filed. The system already knows that this is a document in the real estate module out of the lease journal table. It is the original, and we could even define if this has a file life. Maybe we are going to be required to maintain this lease for 60 months before we can destroy it. I can now go in and indicate that I want to email this document to a particular individual, and that would be the tenant. We type in his name here, click the button, and confirm that we want to have the email prepared and sent. I can now view that email. The document has been attached. It's been addressed. I can include an email message and go ahead and send the lease for review and signature off to my prospective and future tenant. We started by selecting the unit and the tenant. We then selected all of the clauses that we want to add and all of the terms and conditions and all of the fees that we want to detail in the lease contract. Once we have defined and selected all of our charges, we then have the system build the lease for us, and with the document management module, the system will build the lease for us. That's all there is to creating that lease. And when this lease expires, if the tenant wishes to renew, we can simply use this option right here to create a duplicate lease with all of the same information, make the few changes necessary for the dates and maybe the fees for the new lease year, and produce the new lease with the click of a button in just a matter of minutes. In our next class, we're going to look at how easy it is to create deeds and contracts for sale when we are, instead of leasing our properties, we are selling them to buyers. I'll see you in that class.